Hello, hello. I'm Celia, and I'm together here with my co-founder Agis. How are you, Agis, today?
All good, Celia. Thank you.
Excellent. So we are starting on every other Friday, 12 o'clock UK time, to do a quick roundup of what has happened in the AI news, but not from the perspective of these are the stories. It's more about why they matter for growing businesses that are looking to integrate AI into their business. And today we're going to cover 4, 5 stories, and a lot has been happening, but we selected very specifically the ones that we think are important to be in your radar. If you are a senior leader, if you are the business owner, or indeed an external advisor to a growing company. So, Agis, where do you think we should start? Shall we start with Claude Lake? Shall we do that?
Yeah, I think this probably is the greatest news this week.
Absolutely. So you may have picked up the news that there was a major leak with Claude Code. This happened on the 31st of March, just a few days ago. By Anthropic, which is the company that owns and has developed Claude. And effectively, it accidentally published the entire source code of Claude Code in what appeared to be a routine software update. And the files were about, I'm looking at some statistics here, and the facts actually 59.8 megabyte source map containing about 500,000, over 500,000 lines of code over nearly 2,000 files. I mean, this is massive. This is effectively massive. It was reported initially on X. A security researcher discovered the mistake, and within just a few hours, the code had been mirrored onto GitHub, and it was rewritten again in Python and Rust. So effectively, what that means is that the code, which is the IP, if we want to look at it this way, of Anthropic, was released for obviously not civilians, I would say, but it was released out in the public for anyone who understands about these things to copy and develop further. So, Agis, what are your thoughts on this? If you have any more stats and facts to give me, and also why does it matter? What are the players involved here?
Well, first of all, I would say it's we were used to AI making a lot of mistakes in the past few months. So now we have again a more familiar human error. But apart from that, I would say the most interesting thing we learned is that it's actually quite complicated to build a system like that, and it involved a lot of code. So, what does this mean? It means that we still need to do a lot of engineering. AI is not working on itself. So I would say this is the main thing to consider here. So this is only one tool. So this is Cloud Code. It works. It's basically an agent that helps you code, and it contained more than 500,000 lines of code. And it was very complicated. It had a lot of workflows, different models, a lot of different functions and different parts. So the bottom line is this is not basically it's not working on its own. You still need to do a lot of things, a lot of engineering, a lot of human effort to create an application like that. And remember, this is an application that does only one thing. So imagine building an application for another domain. This still needs like quite a lot of effort from humans to do. So we are not in the era of complete automation. We can do a lot more than we could do before, but we are not anywhere near, complete plug and play automation.
That's a very good point, actually, because we do see this a lot around. There are a lot of clickbaity type of posts and little videos that say effectively, "I'll teach you this, download this sheet, and you'll be able to do this all on your own." It doesn't quite work like that because, as you said, it doesn't work autonomously. I think if I look at it from a marketing perspective, it's also quite tricky because the entire positioning of Anthropic has been around security first. So they started, just to remind ourselves, they opened up Claude in March 2023, which was 3 4 months after ChatGPT was released to the public. We knew that they were developing it, but they were a little bit slow at releasing it because they wanted to make sure that there were lots of guardrails in place. And of course, recently, I guess we had all the spats with the Pentagon and the US government, where it created a wave of individual professionals, at least, who left ChatGPT and went straight to Claude as a statement, I feel, as well. And what we are discovering, and I'm not having a dig to Anthropic. In fact, I like Claude very much myself, and I think you do as well, Agis. The point here is that it's you can never guarantee 100% absolutely everything. You do need specialists to work through things and set it up properly, and still big embarrassing mistakes can happen.
Yeah, but I would say this is one part, right? So
Yes.
the part about security is one conversation, and of course, this is important. But I would say both machines and humans make errors. So this is part one. But the complexity part is a different different conversation. So all this complexity basically means that we still have a lot of effort, human effort, that, like I said before, that we need to basically do to create applications like that. Regarding Anthropic, yeah, Anthropic was actually started a bit later. They had a substantially different selling point in the beginning. It was a bit more human, a bit more, it had a more human feel and a more friendly approach to discussing with you. But it slowly evolved more towards tools, and it's actually one of the, like I would say, 3 4 major platforms and tools to use nowadays.
Yes, and I'm smiling because what I picked up, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, I guess, is that the developer community that they have been gifting us a lot of new terms, like vibe coding, for example. They have now, following this very incident that happened with Claude Code, they've developed a new phrase which is called harness engineering. So, harness engineering, the way I understanding, is you have the agent, which means it's the model that you're using, in this case, Claude, plus a harness, which I think is quite funny. Anyway, so that's from a branding perspective. It keeps giving birth to new terminologies. But I think, as you said, the important point for businesses is that AI is a brain on its own, but it needs the actual body. It needs the processes, the guardrails, the workflow design, the context management, and of course, someone to keep checking it. I mean, what other important insights for businesses do you see in this case with Claude Agis?
Well, the first part is of course, security, but this was always the case. You need to be very careful of what you release. and it is becoming increasingly easier to make mistakes because we are using, all of these platforms, and we are basically creating more security potential, issues. On the second part, it's about the future of what we're building at the moment, right? So we are in an era where the part about the models themselves have been improving slower than they used to. So we are reaching kind of a plateau, and we are seeing that they're kind of converging between companies, and so capabilities and models are converging. So what's next? The next part is building all of these new kind of applications in a way, like Cloud Code and like many other tools. So the applications of the future. So they're basically autonomous, semi-autonomous, or agents that help us perform specific tasks, and this is what we will be seeing in the future, I believe. So bigger companies and smaller companies and organizations will start building these applications, and they will require a lot of human effort.
Yes, I agree actually, and we are not effectively. That's what it is. We are not at the stage, and it's quite misleading when you read a lot about this online. That, oh, do this, and then you take the rest of the week off, and everything's going to be fine, and they will be doing, and the agents are going to be organizing themselves. Doesn't quite work like that. So if we are to look at another story, I actually wrote a post on LinkedIn about this, and there've been other reports in the meantime. But here in the UK, we had the very first government official government report on AI adoption. And a few days later, we also had from MIT a very important report on AI adoption, and that was really quite interesting, and writer as well. Uh, the specific numbers vary a little bit between the reports. Also, because some of the reports have a US focus, but specifically the one for the UK, effectively what it's saying is that only 1 in 6 businesses is implementing or deploying properly AI, which is quite interesting. It's still quite low. I was expecting it to be a little bit more. And then if we look at what is the specific area that businesses are focusing, 70 plus percent is all about content creation. And I think that was a bottleneck for a lot of small businesses in particular, to create content across social media and repurpose it. And that has been one of the key use cases. And the agentic side, I was quite surprised actually. I used to see that it was only 7% of the businesses in the UK which actually have deployed AI agents. What I found quite interesting, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, what came out of it was that yes, there have been significant productivity gains to those companies that have deployed AI already, but they haven't been able to connect these gains to any revenue leaks or to connect it directly with ROI. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say, well, there are two different questions, right? So one is actually implementing a solution, and the second one is actually successfully implementing a solution. I would say this is probably a human error. So in my experience, I also remember it in different, every time you have a new tool, a lot of companies, especially the big ones, they want to implement a solution. They want to say that they're using AI or they're using whatever the latest trend, blockchain, whatever that is. And a lot of times they don't understand what they are doing. Many times they don't even care if they understand what they're doing. I've even seen in my experience people selling solutions that could not work. There was no way that they would work. I'm not even sure. I don't know if they knew it or they didn't care about it, but they were, they just wanted to say, okay, we are in AI, we are selling AI, we're developing AI. So I think this is a lot of cases. This is the basically it's just the hype. We just want to say we're doing something. We don't even care if it's actually working. And the second part is that it's actually different. So the way AI works, the use cases of AI, they're different than the classic previous use cases of data science, for example. So we have different tools, different methodologies, and you have to know, you have to get experience to test whether these work. So I would say it makes sense. Okay, and we will see an acceleration of this going forward. I mean, we will see more successful use cases going forward. But I would say that it's very important to understand the use case, understand whether it's possible to solve the use case using the proposed solution, because you cannot solve every problem with all solutions. And I would finally say find some people who understand the technology and the solution.
Yes, I agree 100% because it's not about the tool. And we are always saying this when we talk to clients, I guess, don't we? It's strategy first, always strategy first. So we want to start with the end in mind. What is it that specifically we want to address in business? And then we can identify which AI solution is the right for that, is the right one for that. So we have at the moment this discrepancy, and I do feel that unless we're able to jump for straightforward productivity gains, nothing to be sniffed about those, by the way. Very important to have these as part of a bigger process and a bigger picture. But we also need to be thinking what is the ROI for any serious AI investment. And just to mention here to anyone watching us live, or if you're watching us after this live, then we are actually doing two masterclasses in. Let me pull this up in April, coming up next week and the week after. So we are discussing very specifically about how AI can help small businesses and growing businesses to bridge the revenue leaks in their company. So we very specifically focus on that because we have identified that that is the issue. So in the links below, I am going to add the link. You can jump on Luma. This is where we're hosting the events, and we can have a chat about it. So let me find us again. Okay, thank you. So yes, it's about identifying the as you would work with any strategies, whether it's a business coach, a business strategist, a CMO. You always start with the end in mind, right? That's the AI is no different whatsoever. So if we move over to, and this is quite recent actually, just happened today. We are recording this live is Friday the 17th of April. So this actually happened yesterday on the 16th of April, and it's about the UK sovereign AI unit and the 500 million that the government has allocated as a funding. So the technology secretary, Liz Kendall, launched the Sovereign AI Unit. This happened at King's Cross headquarters of the self-driving company, Wave, I think they're called. And this was initially set out about a year ago as the part of the AI Opportunities Action Plan here in the UK, and it was confirmed earlier this year. So what that moves is it's moving into now, the operational phase of that action plan. And I have the quote here from the technology secretary, and she said, "If we believe AI is absolutely critical to our economic prosperity and our national security, which I do, then this fund is one of the single most important things this government would do." Which is quite interesting. So, what do you think this shows? Where are things moving in the bigger picture, Agis?
The thing with, okay, we talked about security, but there is another fundamental part here, right? So is control, and this is the most important part. So you have, if you are using an LLM, you are essentially giving information. So the data you input in an API, and this API at the moment belongs to a company that is from the US or maybe from China. So all this data gets there. So what they do with it, they have their own terms. But in the end, you are giving all this data away. Okay. So a lot of countries are now, and companies, of course, are very concerned with that. So starting from the use cases which are, as you understand, very sensitive. So, for example, you have some doctors, and they are using that for they're having discussions for patient cases, for example. So imagine these leaks, and you have like a cancer patient, or you have serious conditions. So this is a very severe case. But even cases which are less severe, let's say, they are still important, because imagine you're feeding all your strategy data. Imagine you're feeding all your important data, other kinds of data, so competitive data. So in the end, you are feeding all this information to a system that you do not control. So this is why we're talking a lot about sovereignty, the the capability of controlling the infrastructure and the models, and having them hosted in your own, from your own company or enterprise to the country. So this is why this discussion is very important, because in the end of the day, the people who control this data, the entities who control this data and this information, are going to have tremendous power over everyone, basically.
Yes, the big thing here. So I think we need to clarify exactly as you said. There is the big picture, what it actually means practically, because that's what we are here to do, to practically understand what is going on. There are certain things that if you are a business and you are your clients is the public sector or larger logistics companies or enterprise level. If you're selling to enterprises, then the big shift here is that the sovereign AI means that this is now which AI you're using has become a procurement question as well. And I think I also want to note that OpenAI's Stargate program, which was about data centers, building them here in the UK, has been paused. We can unpack this at a later discussion, but there is a degree of nervousness. And the other thing I wanted to, sorry, yeah.
Go on, go on.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to clarify was that this fund I mentioned, about 500 million, which, by the way, in AI terms, is not it's not crazy amount of money, but it's a good start. It's about companies that develop AI themselves. It's not for businesses deploying AI. And I think we were discussing this a couple of days ago, that there is a great business opportunity here. So let's assume that you are a logistics company, you run an e-shops or you have a warehouse or something like that. You use AI to solve a particular problem in your company. And then maybe you decide that you want to work with AI experts and create a product. You can productize that solution. You can create a new AI startup. So the first movers are going to have more opportunities available to them should they choose to pursue them. So that's the one thing. And of course, just to say that the government here in the UK has the AI Skills Boost program, which is the target is about 10 million workers to develop AI skills by 2030. That's quite different. It's particularly focused to SMEs. Anything else on your mind about this, Ayes, before we move on?
Well, is the technology of the future. So I imagine we would see a lot a lot of countries also here in the EU. I imagine we will see a lot of these uh, you know initiatives.
Yes, yes, I agree. Now, the other news that we had, I posted about this a few days ago, but I'd love for you to unpack it a bit further for us, Agis, is the Canadian company Cohere is merging with a German company called, I'm assuming I'm pronouncing this correctly, Aleph Alpha, I believe is called. Now, why on earth should we care about this? So, this isn't an investment type of conversation. In fact, it links with the points we were just making about sovereign AI and what the UK government is doing. So, Cohere is Canadian and it has developed its own large language model. It's an important company with significant space, and it was encouraged, that's probably the better word to use, by the Canadian government to seek a collaboration with a German company which is also developing sovereign AI. And the German government has already said that it's going to be a client of this new company, however they call it. They are in advanced mergers. It has been happening quietly for a number of weeks. In fact, I think it started before the beginning of this year. And the understanding is that this is going to go ahead. Now, without getting political, that's not the point. I'm sure we are all aware of the shifting sands in terms of where does my AI sit. So, how do you view this, and why does it matter for businesses, Ayes?
I would say this is linked again. So I wouldn't delve too much into the specifics, but I would say that many countries and a lot of companies I expect as well, they are moving into the field and they want to have more control of the technology and their data and where this is hosted and what kind of technologies are being used. So I would say that I said that again. This is going to be the future, and whoever controls these technologies is going to to basically be able to have potentially an advantage or even control the business and the companies of the future. So I expect we will be seeing more and more of these developments.
Yes, and I think for businesses it matters because, for example, in this particular case we're discussing, the Canadian and the German government signed what's called the Sovereign Technology Alliance earlier this year, and I think it's fair to say that it's as a direct response of the U.S. Chinese AI dominance because they are dominant here at the moment. I think what is happening, it's getting a lot more complex for for serious businesses looking to grow. The conversation is not about which tool should I use. Shall I use ChatGPT? Shall I use Claude? I'm afraid it's a lot more complex than that, and there is this layer above which means you also have to look at the supply chain. And I don't know whether we are going to see more legislation. Definitely, the EU leans towards more higher regulation. I think the UK is probably fair to say we are kind of between the US and the EU on this still, and everyone is still finding their fit. But I think for businesses which are very market aware and they are actively pursuing opportunities to acquire growth through acquisition and through mergers, or in fact build a new add-on business. This is a factor, is one of the factors to take into consideration. I think that's really the reason. Would you say, Agis?
I would say let's think of it like there's an interesting parallel in the defense space, right? So we are seeing this moving, unfolding, basically. So we're seeing that the Europe, the EU, the UK as well, and the US are so there's some kind of, let's say, misalignment in many things. So a lot of other players are trying to develop more capabilities for various reasons. And I would say the same thing. There's a parallel here as well. So this also creates a lot of opportunity because it's not so new developments are not only going to be happening in the valley in San Francisco, they will also be happening in other countries, and there will be substantial opportunity, investments, ecosystems building around these places. So there will be a lot more local opportunity and know-how, I would say, in around the UK, also in the EU. So this, I would say, are the most important parts.
Yes, thank you. And I think the final story for today, I realize we've gone a little bit over the 30 minutes, but this is an important one to discuss. And I'm sure that in the future we are going to go back. OpenAI has done a major push towards enterprise AI. And in fact, this is quite recent. Here in April, they published an enterprise strategy and they launched what they're calling OpenAI Frontier, which is a separate platform which is for building and deploy and managing AI agents across entire companies, obviously, again, enterprise level. And I was reading some statistics that enterprise businesses, clients, are consist about 40% of OpenAI's revenue, which makes a lot of sense. Though OpenAI or ChatGPT, I should say, has over 900 million users per week, which is a crazy amount of number. But yes, it is primarily enterprises who are their clients, and the API process. I was also reading some facts. There are 15 billion tokens per minute. That's currently the usage. So that's a lot. Basically, that means it's a lot. So about the agent economy, then, what are your thoughts on this, Ayes? What do you think?
We were discussing that before. So we are now in a much more mature stage where we are already seeing, and we are going to see more applications that are actually working, and they are working quite well. So we are going to see this acceleration there. Um, I, it also has to do with the way its company positions itself, right? So I would say here, in this case, Anthropic and Claude are more positioning towards the B2C market, and OpenAI is positioning, more on the enterprise market. But yeah, it's an important event, and we're also seeing here that they're building all of these platforms, and again, like let's finish the way we started. So we were saying that there is a lot of effort, a lot of human effort required to build all of these applications. And so basically OpenAI is providing here a tool and a platform and the tools to build all of these applications, or at least part of it.
Yes. Yeah, so they're moving effectively. I think it's fair to say they're moving towards a full stack proposition. And I
Yeah.
think that links with Sora, Sora, the video application that was launched a year and a half ago, that never quite took off. And officially, as of the 26th of April, if I remember correctly, they are shutting it down. But Sora, which is text to video, by the way, or image to video, is something that will be incorporated into this new offering again at enterprise level. Because obviously creation of video with AI is very expensive in tokens. It requires a lot of energy, and they have made a decision that's at least has been over all the analysis out there, that the reason why Sora is going is because they want to focus on enterprise and spend their development money wisely. And of course, we are talking about big companies here, right? Five FTSE 500, McKinsey scale type of budget. But where do you think the smaller businesses sit in this? Where is the opportunity for smaller businesses?
Well, it's the same thing as before, right? So we started with Cloud Code. Bigger companies and bigger organizations usually build the tools that are popular with the most people because there's a bigger market. But then this starts to basically accelerate. The costs are reduced, so you are going steadily towards smaller companies with smaller markets and smaller pools, and you can address these basically smaller pools of the smaller markets, and that's the opportunity there. Each company, okay, you can always find a new market, but even the one you already have, you need to think how is this going to be in the future, because the future is no longer just an application on your phone or like a web app. This is changing. We are moving towards agents. We are moving towards a
Mm.
different philosophy of services. And I would say if you are a business that is working in a market, either B2C, B2B, doesn't matter, you need to think about how are you going to, how are you going to adapt to this change? What kind of product?
Yes, exactly. And I think the opportunity out there, and this is something that as a gap with intelligent acceleration, that's one of our objectives to bridge that gap between simple usage to developing to actually optimizing a platform that can do a lot more than we are actually using it for, and also starting to build agents within that. Interesting things have been happening, so stay tuned. It will be with you in 2 weeks time on Friday at 12 o'clock BST for now. And just remember to show you the masterclass that is happening. I'm going to drop the link below. Let me just have a very quick look. John is saying, I didn't know about the Sovereign AI Fund. Thank you, John. That's interesting. I know John is quite technical and uses Cloud Code. So yes, this is an opportunity for sure that's happening. And thank you for being here, John. So we will see you again in 2 weeks' time. Bye, guys, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.